he's like, we need more offense. And I said, well, I need to be on a more offensive line. You can't, it's hard to score in the league if you're not on the power play. And it wasn't even that I wasn't on the power play. It's just, everything leads into one thing, and that's confidence. So you touch the puck a little bit more on the power play. You make more plays on the power play. That confidence just builds and builds and builds. And it's like the game slows down, like you said earlier. And so he goes, okay, I'll put you with Yashin and Kozlov. And the moment that happened, it turned. First game I had 2 goals, 1 assist. Next game I had a goal and 2 assists. I'm just using an example. I don't remember.
Yeah.
I do actually. But things just, it didn't stop.
That was Jason Blake, former UND Fighting Saint, Los Angeles King, New York Islander, Toronto Maple Leaf, Anaheim Mighty Duck, a player of 871 NHL games, an NHL All-Star in one of those seasons, a Bill Masterton Trophy winner, a cancer survivor, a U.S. Olympic team member in 2006, but most importantly, he was my training camp roommate in 1999 with the Los Angeles Kings, and you are listening to the Up My Hockey Podcast with Jason Podolin. Just watch me now. Welcome to Up My Hockey with Jason Podolin, where we deconstruct the NHL journey, discuss what it takes to make it, and have a few laughs along the way. I'm your host, Jason Podolin, a 31st overall draft pick who played 41 NHL games, but thought he was destined for 1,000. Learn from my story and those of my guests. This is a hockey podcast about reaching your potential. So today we have on Jason Blake. Jason, as you heard in the intro, had an 871 game career, another 30 games in the playoffs. Primarily, the majority of his career was with the New York Islanders. We talk about those amazing seasons where he scored 25, 22, 28, 40 goal seasons. Really stepped into his own right. But we go back even further, as we do with this show, to figure out how Jason Blake became Jason Blake. And super wild. We talk about him not knowing whether he's going to play golf, be a golf pro, or be a hockey player. Was a late arrival to the USHL, was a late arrival to the university program, was 24 years old when he signed his first pro deal. And that's where him and I came in contact with each other with the Los Angeles Kings. I was already 3 or 4 years into a pro career. He was just coming out of university, 3 years older than me. I was a washed-up veteran by this point, and he was a shiny new penny, as goes the deal sometimes with hockey. And we talk about that transition, or not the transition, but the polarities, of what that's like, and how that affects different people at different times, and how the path matters, and how one of Jason's biggest turning points, or not really a turning point for him, but a real struggle, was with the year he redshirted when he left from Ferris State on his way to North Dakota, and he wasn't allowed to play for a year, and how that was really a defining moment for him to get through that, and how he got through that. And then another defining moment when he got into LA and was traded to the New York Islanders and realized there were some things that he had to clean up and to figure out, and then getting established as an NHLer in the Island, and growing his role and earning the trust from the coach, and getting more minutes and getting more ice time and getting more production, where he really felt at home, watched the crowd get behind him and the support grow, and then having to leave, his safe place of New York and go to Toronto, where he was diagnosed with cancer in training camp. We go through all kinds of stuff here. We go through it so thoroughly that we don't even get to some really good stuff, like the Olympics. We didn't even talk about the Olympics. I can't believe we didn't talk about the Olympics. But we did talk about his bout with cancer and what that was like, and that's towards the end of the show. So please make sure you listen to this one. Really good stuff there. Awesome takeaways. And some really good stories about Long Island and Mike Milbury and trying to find the edge, to play the game at 5'9", yet to be successful, and how to do that, and how he was pushed at different times by different people. to allow him to become the longtime NHLer, the productive NHLer that he was. We do cover the training camp. We were together when Jason blew his knee out, and spent a lot of time together that training camp. So we have a personal history. I ended up playing my last NHL game, which we don't talk about, with the New York Islanders. He was in that lineup that game. So Jason was a part of my last game in the NHL. And yeah, as things go, our careers paths crossed and changed and veered. And one thing remains the same, though, that when I reached out to Jason on Messenger, it was quick to get in touch with him, and I really appreciate him stepping in here and doing this. Great career, great guy. Lots to learn from this conversation. Like I said, hope you stick around to the end, because not many people play an entire year with cancer, going through the recovery of cancer while trying to play in the greatest league in the world, in a new city to boot, with new teammates, new fans, new everything. So that's really good stuff. So without further ado, I bring you Mr. Jason Blake. All right, here we are. Welcome to the Up My Hockey podcast. Special guest, and as you've announced already offline, the best training camp roommate a guy could ask for, Mr. Jason Blake. How you doing, Blakey?
I'm good. Thanks for asking. It's been a long.
Yeah, it certainly has been a long time, man. It's so funny, like going over the rap sheets too, meaning like the hockey DB in the back of the hockey card. Like I guess we started together at the beginning of your pro career, and I was like in the middle of it, and then we crossed paths again in LA, like not LA, in New York, my last ever NHL game, and then you obviously continued on. I went to Europe, and just kind of interesting the way paths go. And I know you're not super familiar with the podcast here. However, we like to talk about the journey. I mean, I really like to talk about that. The backbone kind of, Blakey, is like how do we get to where we want to go, right? And how do we do it really well? And kind of to take away the misconception that it's always the best and the brightest and the shiniest penny that gets to these NHL positions. It's a different path for everybody, right? And sometimes it's opportunity, sometimes it's whatever. And I know your story in particular is super cool, and especially looking at it now, like where you started and where you finished. And we're going to dig into as much as we can, if that's all right with you.
Sounds great.
Super. I want to start the USHL because your path started late. A lot of guys coming out of college do. You somehow you avoid the NHL draft as an 18-year-old, as a 19-year-old. Looks like you got into that league, like that junior league, the USHL, even late. Can we just talk about maybe that, like how you got there and why you were a little bit of a late arrival?
Well, I mean, times have changed now, but back then, there's only 10 teams in the USHL, and I didn't really know much about it. I mean, I grew up in Moorhead, Minnesota, and, it's 4 hours north of Minneapolis. And, I was a good high school hockey player there, but, you come down to Minneapolis, the pool is so much larger and there's so many more guys. And, I just finished up my high school career in Moorhead. We were fortunate to, my senior year of high school was the first Moorhead team to ever go to the state tournament. We lost to Bloomington Jefferson in the final. Probably doesn't mean much to you, but I mean, they went on and won 3 state championships. Mark Parrish was a part of that team. Mike Crowley was a part of that team. So they, and after that, I mean, I also played golf in high school, and probably back then I was maybe a little bit better golfer than I was a hockey player. I focused on that a little bit more. And a guy called me up probably 2 weeks after. Rob Grillo was his name. He was the coach of the Waterloo Blackhawks, and said that he drafted me in the USHL. And I didn't even know what the USHL was. I'm like, I'm going to Florida to play golf, but thank you. So then I talked to my parents, and they're like, no, you're going to play. You're going to go play hockey. And I'm like, wow, I wanted to play golf because everybody's dream is to play in the NHL or play college hockey. I just didn't know if that dream would ever come true. With an open mind, and I just was fortunate to go to Waterloo and have good success there and had a great time. And and a lot of guys are leaving now when they're seniors in high school. Like my son, he's a junior. He played his first 15 games in Chicago in the USHL, came back to play the high school season. And then he went back, and they just ended up winning the USHL championship last weekend.
Sweet.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. But, I think that every kid's dream is to play, but is it a reality? And is it a reality with the parents? And, I just was fortunate to go to Waterloo in a good situation, good coaches, and that's kind of where I developed maybe to get to the next level, and that's college. And
how crazy is that though? So you were this close to not even being a hockey player. Like, you're going to go play golf and pursue that. And you're like, okay, this hockey thing's been good. Nice run. Got to the state championships in high school, and you're ready to turn the page essentially.
Well, kind of. I mean, I loved hockey. I think, when you're playing high school hockey in Moorhead, I mean, like I said, I was a good player, but if I come down here, I'd be just middle of the road in Minneapolis. That's where I'm living now. And, it's just, I'm like, well, shit, I might as well go play golf. I mean,
Right.
I enjoyed golf. Once hockey was over every year, I put my hockey bag in the attic, and it never came out until hockey season next year. I mean, times are a little different now. Kids are training all the time and putting more effort into the one sport than versus 2 or 3 sports. So yeah, it is crazy. I look back and it's like, holy cow, I'm glad I made the right decision or made that decision.
Do you think, a little bit of a sidetrack, you got kids now, and obviously a kid that's a pretty darn good player yourself, or himself. Do you think that there's room for that still? Like a player that, does hockey during hockey and is just an athlete outside of that? Or do you think that with the way the times are now, you got to be more of a one sport pony?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I know that there's been talk about it for years, but I also think, when you're growing up, you are playing multiple sports, and then you just kind of weed out the ones that you don't like as much as the other sport. And I think there is a lot of emphasis on kids gearing just one sport. I think their parents are all in on the one sport, whether it's hockey, baseball, football. It doesn't matter what sport it is. I mean, I know in hockey in Minnesota, I mean, if you're playing hockey in Minnesota, it's 11 and a half month sport. I mean, you can literally play every weekend. And, I know that, like, my son just came home from Chicago yesterday, and he's basically in a week, he's going to start working out and getting ready for the draft and getting ready for the next season. And he's going to play in Chicago the whole year, his senior year next year. And I mean, I think it's crazy because I also want him to be a kid and enjoy other things. And, today's on the golf course. So, it's nice to have that other sport as a backup plan. I mean, I think at the end of the day, kids are really geared towards, if you're a hockey player, you're playing hockey. Yeah. I don't see a lot of, or, you're playing golf for fun, but I don't see a lot of kids playing multiple sports anymore. Can it be done? Of course it can. There's a lot of great athletes out there. We have guys that play hockey on our high school team that play baseball, and they're really good baseball players. I mean, they're probably maybe better baseball players than they are hockey players.
Right.
But,
yeah, I just think like it happens so young now. It just seems like, I mean, there's in every association, every organization, like 9-10-year-olds, like considering themselves hockey players. And that to me is a little bit crazy. But you become a victim of your environment too. Cause like my oldest, who's 11, I mean, he is interested in other stuff and he does do other things. Right. But like, it's a little bit forced by me, right? Like you need to do other things other than hockey. Like he wants to be on the ice all the time. Like, we just put the bag away after our spring season, and he's already asked me when he can go on the ice again. And I mean, which I love, but I also like, let's go play some baseball. Let's go kick the soccer ball around. Let's go do something else, right? And get you a little more well-rounded and get you involved in these other sports. So it's tough when you got a kid that's that keen, to pull the reins on him and say, no, let's do something else and try and get back to a little bit more of a traditional style that maybe you and I grew up with.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you said the right word, well-rounded, and it's, as hockey players, I mean, when we grew up, Jason, it was totally different than what it is now, hands down. And it's like, for my son, I mean, he's 17 now, so he's going to choose what he wants, his path. But as kids, I mean, everybody wants to play in the NHL, and everybody thinks they can play in the NHL or play at a higher level, right? Well, when that doesn't come, that dream doesn't come, I'm not saying it's not going to come. it's always nice to have something else in your life, because I mean, it's like, it's disappointment. Oh shoot, I didn't make it. I didn't get a Division I scholarship. I didn't get a scholarship to go to college, or I didn't go play in the OHL. I mean, for you guys in Canada, you play in the OHL, WHL. I mean, you're all in when you go play. I mean, you guys are leaving at 16, right? I mean, here it's North America is so geared, or the United States is geared for more college than your leagues in Canada, and it's like, if you don't get that scholarship, I mean, there's other sports that because most hockey players are athletic, so
Right.
you can play other sports too. And I mean, I know multiple people that play different sports in high school, but I mean, if you want to be a hockey player, I guess be a hockey player. It's
Yeah.
hard. I have an 8-year-old that's the same way. I mean, all he wants to do, he's only 8, and all he wants to do is shoot pucks in the net. And this, I'm like, let's go play catch with baseball. And then I watch him catch a baseball. I'm like, let's go back to the hockey net. I'm like, holy cow, we got to work on this.
Oh, that's hilarious. Yeah, which is great. You mean, and I hear NHL trainers saying that now too, like that it is interesting because, you mentioned that hockey players are athletes, and I always thought that they were, because, hockey in itself is a very athletic, right? It's very dynamic. You have to do a lot of things at once, which would be prone to being just, an athlete. But now there's NHL trainers that, like, I've talked to, like, these guys don't even know how to throw a football or catch one, or, you know what I mean? Like, they've just, because it's this new generation, that's all they've ever done. Like from a young age is hockey, right? Like, and they're not well-rounded anymore. So I don't know if that makes you a better hockey player or what does. Like you said, not everybody is going to play in the NHL. And I just think the exposure to other sports and being a good athlete and well-rounded is just a good people skill, life skill, right? And might as well do it as long as you can. It's going to get serious for those guys, like you said, at some point, whatever that is, 14, 15, 16, where you're going to have to make a choice, right? If you're going to want to keep up. I don't think that happens prior to that. But anyways, back to you, man. Waterloo Blackhawks, 100-point season. As a 19-year-old, right? A 19-year-old?
Yeah.
So as a 19-year-old, so for you, it sounds like although NHL, obviously you knew existed, you knew it was there, that was the big dream. You had your sights set on a scholarship. That's where you wanted to go first and foremost, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in Grand Forks for 13 years. I wanted to play for the Fighting Sioux, but then again, it's like you didn't get an offer. I never really got an offer from them. And, I'm sure you're going to touch on it. I went to Ferris State for a year because I thought, again, the NHL is so in the distance of my mind. I mean, do you want to be there? Of course. Do you want to play? Of course. But at the end of the day, like, are you going to make it? I was 5. I mean, we worked out together in the summer. I was 5'9". I mean, my work ethic was good, but you never know you're going to get there. And so I went to Ferris State for a year because there was only 4 schools that offered the PGM program. So I went on a visit there. That's pro golf management, to be a golf pro at a golf course. And I'm like, you know what? I'll have that to fall back on. Like, I'll play my college hockey, but I'll be involved in that. I'll be involved in golf. And if it doesn't work out, then I can be a golf pro at a golf course. Would I have been happier? No. I made the right decision. So that's, when I was in Waterloo my second year, I had, I'm not going to say multiple scholarship offers. I mean, that'd be just lying to you. I had interest, but what sort of interest? So I just chose Ferris State because I'm like, they're the top program in the country for the PGM program. I can play golf, play hockey, go to school for free on a full scholarship. And at the end of the day, I'll work at a golf course, hopefully somewhere warm.
Yeah, okay, so awesome. So you take the opportunity that's in front of you after an unbelievable USHL season. Do you think, like, just looking back on it now, like, you did seem like tailor-made, fast, skilled for the college system. What was, how come there weren't more offers, do you think?
Well, because it was super early in the year. I had interest after my first year of juniors, and I think I had, I'm not 100% sure, like 50, 55 points or something. And then my second year, I just, the USHL is a development league. And at that time, most of the guys that played in the USHL were guys that were seniors in high school or guys that graduated from high school. Now it's shifted a little bit where younger guys are coming out of high school to play in this league, and the league speaks for itself. It's unbelievable. I don't know. It was earlier on, things kind of took off right at the drop of the puck, my second year of the Waterloo, and I just kind of was like, whoa, like things were going really well, and I was putting a lot of points on the board, and then I started getting some calls, and I mean, because I knew that, again, it falls back to the NHL thing. Like you never know, so I knew that I knew that the golf thing would work out. Not to play on the tour or anything, but I knew I could work at a golf course and be happy.
Yeah.
You know, so that's kind of why I chose Ferris State. And Ferris State was a great school, great coaching. Bob Daniels was the coach, awesome guy, awesome guys. And then I made the all rookie team my first year, or all freshman team or whatever you call it, CCHA. And then I decided to leave, come back home to North Dakota. That's when they stepped up and gave me just longer.
I mean, what I think, and I mean, I've covered a lot. I mean, I think this is episode 68 or something. So I had a ton of conversations with some really interesting individuals, most past teammates, but and so from different points in their career. But like just even listening to you right now and trying to contrast that with me, right? Like you said, I left home at 16 to play for the Spokane Chiefs, highly touted prospect as a minor leaguer, right? Like the youth hockey player. Playing for the Canada's national team at a young age, right? Like second round draft pick, 31st overall. Like it was all about the NHL. You know what I mean? Like it would have been a massive failure in my mind. And kind of, it was actually really at the end of the day, like sort of what happened, but like to not be in the NHL, whereas you're 20 years old now in Ferris State and just work, maybe I'll be a golf pro. You know what I mean? Like to me, that's so wild. Like our two different approaches, and then like obviously how they cross and intersect, and then how you end up playing on the Olympic team, how you end up being an NHL or $20 million contract. I mean the rest goes on and on, but it's so individual, right? Like the path is so individual, and I think that's such a beautiful thing about the sport, because like you said, I mean, there's only 700 jobs there, right? But it's weird how those 700 jobs, like where they all come from,
And that's funny that you say that, because that is so true. I mean, you look at when we were playing hockey, or when we were gearing to the NHL, some of these states you would be like, no. I mean, one of the best hockey players in the world right now is from Phoenix, Arizona. I mean, who would ever think of that? Austin Matthews. I mean, who would ever think of that? And I mean, that is the cool thing about our sport, or about hockey, is that you have so many different backgrounds, but most of the guys are it's a kind of fraternity. We all get along off the ice. It's just on the ice you have different feelings about each other. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's like everybody comes from somewhere, different culture, different this, different that. But I mean, I look back at now, and I'm like, you're seeing all these young guys come up, and they all come from, Arizona, Florida, and you're like, holy crap, our sport's growing. But at the end of the day, you want to get to one point, and that's the NHL.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to talk about that a little bit more, because even when we met at LA, like when you're coming in as like, the new shiny penny, yet older than me, and I was almost like washed up and been traded, and you know what I mean? Like it's so weird. Like that whole thing is weird too. But how do you get from Ferris State to North Dakota? Like I don't understand it as a Canadian that's unfamiliar with that system. Like you're committed to a school, and then you're able to transfer. How does that happen?
Well, that was a tough situation. So I've known a guy. He was my college coach, Dean Blaze, for a long time. He was the assistant coach when I grew up in Grand Forks. He was very good friends with my father. And the year that I went to Ferris State, that's the year he got hired as the head coach for University of North Dakota. And it was kind of funny. We went to Grand Forks to play the Fighting Sioux when I was a freshman at Ferris State. And it just kind of came about. Like that's where I wanted to play my college hockey, no matter what. I mean, I grew up there. I got to watch, Dave Tippett. I mean, now he's a coach at Edmonton. I mean, all these guys. He's just one of Eddie Belfour. I mean, these guys, Tony Herkis, Bobby Joyce. I mean, you watch these guys, and that's what you aspire to do if it comes your way. And when I had an opportunity to go back home, I had to sit out a year, which was probably the most difficult year of my life, or one of them. But I sucked it up and practiced and worked out hard that whole year and got ready for the following year.
And practice where?
I got to practice with the guys on a daily basis at UND.
So okay, so you're allowed to be on campus. You're going to class.
Yep.
Correct.
I could do everything except for playing the games because
and that's red shirting. That's what that means.
That's what it was. And I mean, believe me, it sucked. I mean, he would tell me, I would have talks with him once a week, my head coach. And I remember him sitting me down. And it's not like, well, you know me, so it's not like I was a party or anything. But he sat me down right when hockey started. He said, this could go one of two ways. If you do this, it'll go good. If you party or go to school and party all the time, it's going to go the opposite direction. And I just focused on, just working out. Because when I was in high school, I never worked out like they do now. I never lifted weights, never did anything. I mean, like I said, when hockey was over, all I did was play golf. I would be at the range for 2-3 hours hitting balls, go play 18 holes, get back on the range for another hour. I mean, that's all I did. And so now times have changed where at 16, they're like got personal trainers and they're gearing up, plyometrics and agility. I never did that. Or I don't know if you did. I mean, back in the day, we just didn't do that. Yeah. So, that's what I did that whole year. It literally sucked, but that's what I did.
Do you think it got you better?
I think it kind of woke me up a little bit, to be honest with you, because when I came into college, even at Ferris State, I was only 160 pounds, same size, 5 foot. I always say 5'9", but probably not 5'9". But it's I learned how to. I guess that's where I learned my work ethic, to be honest with you, and that's obviously the thing that got me to where I wanted to go was my work ethic. And it was a struggle, but yeah, that's all I did was lift weights with the strength coach. And I ran stairs all the time in the building. When they had pregame skates, I'd be running stairs because I couldn't, they were getting ready for the game and I wasn't playing. So
that's interesting. Yeah. Because, we haven't really got into that, but I don't know what the right word is, undersized, like an undersized player, especially back in the 90s. You know what I mean? Like it was a big league, really big league. To be 5'8", right? You had to do a lot.
5'9".
You had to do a lot of other things right, and you had to have high standards, personal standards, right? Because it'd be easy to be overlooked. So you don't think you really dialed those standards in till like that redshirt year? Like that's when you started to develop the identity of like what you kind of held on to for the rest of your career?
Yeah, hands down. Yeah, I remember going into Ferris State. The summer before I got a full scholarship to go to Ferris State in hockey. And, they went on to win a national championship years after I was there. Chris Kunitz played there. And so they were a good school. They had a good hockey program in the CCHA, which no longer exists. But I never lifted any weights before I went to college. Nothing. I just, whatever. I remember, in college, usually the first month is dry land and strength training. That's kind of the norm. I don't know if they still do that, but that's kind of the norm. And for the whole month of September, you'd work out Monday, Wednesday, Friday as a team with our strength coach, and then Tuesday, Thursday, and then some Saturdays you'd run. And I remember going there and I was like, holy shit, I'm way out of my league right now because I didn't ever lift it. I could barely lift 130 pounds on the bench,
Right.
And you were 16, you were doing that. So freshman in college, I'm like, God,
right.
Been out.
What did you, so that helped your body must have physically changed then too. If you were like 160 pounds, because you were pretty rock solid back when I met you. So then those college years, you must have been able to thicken up, like put some weight on, and you were able to hold it.
Yeah, like I said, that whole year, that's all I did was worked out. And I skated every day, and I would, there was the rink was ours, at North Dakota, so I could skate whenever I wanted to skate. But like when the guys got done with morning skates and stuff, I would stay out there for another half hour and screw around and stuff. But for the most part, yeah, that's what I worked out and ran stairs.
So yeah, so you take a year off. That's so crazy. So how old are you when this is happening?
21.
21 years old. 21 years old, you're redshirting in college. I think I just scored 35 goals or just played 25 games with the Florida Panthers already, at that age. I've been traded for Kirk Muller, I think, by that age. right,
Yeah.
right around then. That's so nuts. Anyways, enough about that. But so you go to North Dakota, you end up starting to play. You win a national championship there.
Yep.
Right,
1990.
and that was in '97. Did I get that right?
Yep. No,
And then so you played 2 more years after that, and you had good years, but there was no NHL interest then until that last year.
Well, after the year we won the national championship in '97, we beat Boston University. And they had a really good team. I mean, Sean Bates was on that team, Chris Drury, Tom Pauly. We were fortunate to beat them. I mean, I don't know. There was some interest, but I mean, I guess what's the hurry, you know? And I decided to stay and well, not that there was like big interest. There was some, and probably playing the NHL or something like or IHL. But I stayed, and then the following year was a rough year for me. So then I just said, well, I come back my last year playing. And
Gotcha. Did you there's something to be said though about that process, and like the how different our paths were. Like I said, like everything was about the NHL and getting there because everyone was telling me I was supposed to be there, and maybe at 19 even, like I was last cut at 18 or 19 from the Panthers, right? Like it was really close to being there. Yet looking back on it, 2, 3, 4 years in like a lower in a developmental environment where you're playing twice a day, like college, right? Where you're working out all the time and working on your physical body, right? To get strong enough. And it's like, so it's not such a rush, right? Like it's, there's some advantages there, but it's hard not to feel like you're not at the party, I think too,
Well, I think, yeah, you're 100% right, Jace. I mean, 100% right. I think I try to tell parents it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. Every kid is different. I mean, we're different. Every kid's body's different. Everybody's different maturity level. They'll let you know when they're ready to go. And I mean, we've had this conversation with some parents here. Well, I'll just say the Middlestead family. Casey plays for Buffalo, and it was, they were so gung ho about leaving, and I'm like, why do you want to leave? I mean, and I get it that you see dollar signs and you see money, but at the end of the day, I mean, you got to do what's best for yourself. Is just because someone's going to pay you $900,000, which is a lot of money, don't get me wrong, but they're going to pay you that next year. So what's your hurry to go? Like, it's not a sprint. It's a marathon. Everyone's different. I mean, you've seen little kids at 11 years old, 12 years old, go end to end and score goals, right? Well, at 16, 17, are they doing the same thing? No, that little guy that wasn't doing that's now doing that. And I like everybody's body matures differently. Yeah. Some guys peak early, some guys don't peak late. I mean, it is what it is. And I have always said, I mean, I did take a longer path, but when I look back, as far as my path that I went on, I would never change it.
Right.
I mean, obviously, go where I wanted to play in the NHL. When I went to North Dakota, that dream started to become, in my mind, more reality. Like yours was when you were 16, 17, when you got drafted. And mine started to come. Like I said last week, I knew I was going to, after we won the national championship, I knew that I'd play in the NHL someday. Now, it might only be one game, but I knew that I would get to play at least one game in the NHL. And this just as much as me, as anyone, getting the NHL is tough. Staying in the NHL is tougher. And so I knew that, after we won, I'm like, I knew I was going to play at least one game or get, your shot on the 80th game of some team that knew they weren't going to win the playoffs, Yeah. But I guess after we won, I kind of, I don't know. I just had this, maybe it's because my coaches were telling me, or they're like, someday you're going to play. It's just a matter of when and how long, know?
Yeah. You mentioned that you wouldn't change your path, and I guess, technically I wouldn't either, right? I wish maybe there had been a different result, but we are what we are. And that's why this finished product is like why we're having this conversation today,
Yeah.
But what I find interesting is that with a lot of stories, and we haven't gotten even into your NHL aspect yet, though. But here we've already talked about the year you've redshirted, which you said was not fun, which was really tough. But yet the tough spots seem to be the defining points of people's careers, right? Like it's one of those ones where, like you said, like your coach said, you could have taken a left or you could have taken a right. You decided to take a right, and it ended up being a defining moment for you, and it really helped establish what you were going to be in the future, right? So like that's one thing I say to all the athletes I work with now, or one of the points of this program is like that piece of adversity that you're in, whatever you think sucks right now and you hate, like if you can get through that, that's the part that's going to make you be the guy that you're going to be in the future. You know, like that, without that, like you mean, like I said, without that red shirt, maybe you don't be a guy that scores 40 goals in the NHL, right?
Well, you're 100% right. I mean, that taught me, you know, the thing is, I mean, you knew me when I came in the league, but back then, you know, like I said, everybody matures differently. I was very immature, and that was the defining moment. I mean, when I came into school that year, or even at Ferris State, like I like to think that I always had a good work ethic, but I think that pushed me over the edge,
Right.
because I had nothing to do. You know, like I mean, I didn't have games, I didn't have this or that. So all I did was work out. And then, you know, you got it on a program and I started to love it. I started to love to feel stronger. I mean, my chest started to get bigger, my legs started to get bigger, you know, and I just loved how I felt, and I just kept on going. And college can be kind of a party too.
Yeah.
Just made myself like go down this path instead of that path. I'm like, okay, you have an opportunity here. You're going to play at North Dakota. I mean, next year you're going to play for sure. I mean, so this year you just got to suck it up and do the things that Coach Blaze, you know, I had Scott Sandlin too. He's the coach of Duluth Bulldogs. They won a couple national. I mean, they used to talk to me on a daily basis, both of them, and just said, you know, keep doing what you're doing. Keep doing what you're doing. It's going to pay off. It's going to pay off, you know? And there's times where you're like, oh my God, I gotta go in the gym again. Like I want to play a game, like, you know, but at the end of the day, it worked out. I mean,
yeah. You get addicted to the process too. I think that's one thing I found when you get in a groove like that, right? I mean, you said you started to notice the results, right? Like what you put into yourself, you get out, you know, like, but it's not a short-term thing. And I think with some of these athletes now, that is one of the issues, because everything nowadays is like instant gratification, right? Like everything in their life is like, some of these kids have been born with the screen in their hands, right? So like to think that you actually have to put in work for a long time to see some results is tougher for some guys. And I think learning that process and falling in love with it is a competitive advantage this day and age, you know, to really figure that out.
Yeah, and the thing is, I mean, I know we touched on it maybe earlier, but you know, I have 4 kids, and even with my son that's 17 years old, the only thing that I care about with my kids, and especially him playing hockey, is their work ethic. Because no matter what you do in life, you need to have a good work ethic. It doesn't matter what you do in life, and that's the only thing that I instill on him. You know, and for him, it's like I always tell them that everybody wants results. Oh, like if I do this, this is going to happen. Well, that's not it. You have to do this over time, and you got to commit yourself to doing it. And then it might happen or it might not happen, but at least you're giving yourself the best opportunity and the best chance for it to happen.
Yeah.
And like, I have 2 daughters that dance, so they did dance. I got one that's in college now, but that's all I said. I'm like, just work hard. I don't know anything about dancing, but I do know that when you're up there and you're working hard, or you're working hard in this, I know that it might not pay off in a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, but over time it will pay off.
Yeah.
And you know that. I mean,
yeah. And that's your identity. I mean, that becomes part of your identity and who you believe that you are, right? And like I said, that's the part that takes with you. And I do think that hockey really taught me that, like that, you know, that high performance environment of like how to show up, right? How to prepare, how to be ready, how to get things done, right? I mean, as an athlete, that's the only thing that we can really control a lot of times, as you know, right? I mean, you just got to be as ready as you can be. I mean, the coach might call your name, he might not. I mean, you might get traded, you might not, but you just got to be ready to go as best you can when you can, right? And that's on us.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's the only thing we can do.
Yeah.
I mean, there's all different talents of players, especially in the NHL. I mean, you see Connor McDavid, you see this guy. I mean, they're both playing in the NHL, but this guy's talent is above and beyond anyone else's talent that probably anyone's seen except for Sidney Crosby. Yeah. But when you're called upon, I mean, talent is one thing, but work ethic will be spirit to talent. At least that's the way I feel.
Take a short break from the episode here with Jason just to read out a 5-star review that came in on iTunes from RTF71. RTF71 says, new listener, 5 stars. Just started listening and love your Rhett Warner podcast. He is great in Calgary Morning Radio and even better on your podcast. Looking forward to the Mark Dial episode. Really cool. Yeah, that was a great episode. I love talking with Warrensy. He's one of those guys where you rank the people you want to speak with by who you'd want to have a beer with or have dinner with. And Rhett's definitely one of those guys you want at your dinner table. Lots of fun, lots of great stories. Easy to laugh with others and easy to laugh at himself. Really enjoyed that conversation. And the Mark Dial episode has been released. And if for those of you who haven't listened to that, lots of great feedback from them. Mark's story is a really wild ride and one that needed to be told. And I was happy to be the platform that Mark was able to tell it on. So definitely check out that episode. But really appreciate the support. All those reviews matter. That's why I read them. All the direct messages matter to me for sure, reminding me that the podcast makes a difference and the stories and how we translate them to the young players of today that want to fill the shoes of some of the guys that are on this podcast. It really means a lot to me. And it really helps the podcast get out, right, and expand. I know there's a million podcasts out there, and you're choosing to listen to this one, and I am grateful for that. And the more that you can talk about it and share the good news that's happening here, the more people are going to be able to see it. So let's keep climbing the ranks here. Keep her going. Keep those reviews coming in, and I'll read another one next week. Now back to the interview with Jason Blake. Yep. Well, the one thing I talk about Blakey now is with these guys is that I think the biggest competitive advantage, because everyone is so talented now, right? I mean, everyone's like, you want to score goals, you want to do this. And even when we were playing, right? Like you think if you lead your team in goals, like the guy who scores the most goals is going to be the guy who scores in the NHL, right? I mean, that's not the way it works. At some point, there's this leveling out. And the one thing that I'm a big spokesman for now is that thing you're talking, like the work ethic, yes, but like the character also, right? Like, you talk about like sticking around in NHL locker room for a long time or any team for that matter and being successful. Like you got to be a good person in that room, right? Yeah. I mean, you have to be somebody that's helping other people out. You have to be a good role model. You have to be part of the culture that's supporting other people. And that can be a massive difference maker for those, the bottom 3 guys or the 6-7 D man, whatever that is, right? Because there's probably you're splitting hairs on the shot or the skating or whatever. And at the end of the day, it's like, who do you want to have in that locker room?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I learned that early on in my career with LA. I mean, I think it's always tough because we're all superstars on our team, wherever we came from, or at least we were the character guys, or we were this or that.
Yeah.
I struggled my first year. I mean, that just as much as anyone, because you were there, you were a part of it. And I mean, when you're a big fish in a small pond, and the only thing you want to do is play and show yourself that you can play. And I was only in LA for a year and a half. I mean, there's probably a reason why I was only there for a year and a half, and I got traded to New York, and things just I just kind of woke up and was like, holy cow. I mean, I love my time in LA. I loved the guys on the team. I mean, obviously we had a superstar lineup, but then I went to New York for 7.5 years, and that meant a lot to me to stay. I mean, there's not a lot of guys that stay on a team for 7 years in today's age. I mean, guys are moving all the time. And I mean, that's the one thing that I'm grateful or something that I can say that I played at one spot for a long time. I mean, it says something to the organization, like, and as time moved on, I mean, you start to learn, like, okay, you have to become a pro. Becoming a pro doesn't mean just playing in the NHL. There's a lot of different avenues to that. Yeah. Becoming a pro or becoming whatever you're going to become, you have to learn to live on a day-to-day basis. You got to learn how to act. You got to learn how to play with, 18 other guys that are just as good as you, if not better than you, and most of them were. And I mean, it's learning how to be a pro is a lot different than just playing in the NHL. And
what was that for you? Because you said, I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, you're coming in out of university, I don't know, did you get a one-way contract, or what did you sign coming out of there?
One-way contract. So we lost to Boston College my senior year of college, and it was in Milwaukee. And that's kind of when I met Neil Sheehy. I met him before early, like just as an introduction. Neil Sheehy was my agent during my pro career. And I talked to him after the game in Milwaukee. Not very much. My dad talked to him and just said, tell Jason he's going to leave next week somewhere. Don't know where. There was a couple teams that were interested, but it was on a two-way deal. So I ended up going to play in Orlando for the Solar Bears, which was awesome. We lost to, I think, the Houston Aeros in the Turner Cup Finals. It was a great experience, though, overall. And I played 5 games in the IHL, and things went well. I mean, no way to put it. And LA stepped up and gave me a one-way deal. They were interested in before, but they wanted to sign me to a two-way deal. You got to remember, Jason, back then I didn't know what a one-way and a two-way deal was. I'm like, just give me the deal.
Right.
I had no idea.
Right.
It was no.
What a gift, though. I mean, yeah, because if Orlando doesn't work out like that and you're in a two-way, not that you wouldn't have made the Kings, like who knows what would have happened there, but obviously it makes you a heck of a lot harder to send down, right. On a one-way, as you know now, right? So, I mean, that could have got you that, that first year there in the 64 games. You said you got traded there and you were figuring it out, like that you were like a little bit shocked and you didn't have it quite figured out when you first got there. What was like the turning point, and what did you have to do yourself as a person to switch to feel like you could last or to be an NHLer for a long time?
Well, I think, my work ethic, but I think, I got traded to when I came in LA, I mean, camp was good. I mean, I blew my knee out the 3rd day or the 4th day. So I basically missed the whole training camp. And then I was just trying to get back. So I was playing catch up pretty much the year. And then guys started to play, we had Smolinski and Murray and Paul. I mean, lines were kind of formed. And I didn't handle it the best. I mean, the funny thing is people always ask me, there's things that I would take back playing in the NHL. And that's the one. I wish I would have enjoyed it. And earlier on in my career, I wish I would have been a better teammate or better person in the locker room. I wore my heart on my sleeve, but I also wore my frustration on my sleeve. So it was hard. And when I went to New York, I got traded to New York, and Mike Milbury was the GM, and he sat me down, and we talked quite a bit, and all I did was went in there and worked hard. That's all I did was work hard. Whatever happens, happens. I want to play in the NHL. I made it to the NHL. Now I want to last. I signed my first deal. It was a 3-year deal. I wanted to sign more. I wanted to play. I was having fun. And, I signed an extension in New York, and it helped that we had a younger team in New York, so you could kind of relate a little bit more to them, I would say. I mean, in LA, we had I'm not saying an older team, but we had a lot of superstars. I mean, my first roommate was Luc Robitaille. I mean, he's best left winger to probably ever play the game.
Yeah.
And, so it was hard. And that's the one thing I wish I could take back. I wouldn't take anything back other than that. And
right.
Or to enjoy it more. I mean, I think me, I was pretty serious all the time.
Yeah.
It was a smile because I was so focused and serious, but I wish I would have enjoyed it more.
Right.
And so
yeah, that's so wild. And just for everyone listening, and I mean, this is Jason's story, but it's just like it does contrast with my story, because at that moment in time, like, so you were coming out of university as a 24-year-old.
Yep.
I had just been traded for the second time to LA for Yannick Perreault.
Yeah.
And I just led the minor leagues in scoring. Like, I scored 42 goals the year before as a 22-year-old, right? And I get to camp, and LA not only doesn't want to give me a one-way, but they're actually giving me a pay cut. Like, I didn't have a contract at camp. I don't know if you remember that, but I was like at camp without a contract because of what they were offering, right? And ended up taking a pay cut after leading the minor leagues in scoring at 22 years old, right? And you're in that, and then you're coming from the other side of it. You're the shiny new penny coming out of university on a one-way contract, right? And it's like all these people are fighting for the same spot, and yet we're roommates fighting for kind of the same spot, right? Like, it's a really weird environment. At the time, I didn't look at it that way at the time, that you were competition, which is weird because I don't know. I just wasn't wired that way. We were hanging out and going to Cheesecake Factory, right? You know what I mean? And you had your knee or whatever. But it was just such a strange existence, right? Of like, in that environment, your peers are your friends, which are also competing for the same spots. You know, like you said, you were wearing your heart in your sleeve. I was trying to make friends, maybe I went too far the other way, right? I needed to be more serious, I think, because I was too worried about trying to get in the social group. It was a very weird dynamic there with LA. I mean, I'll definitely say that, because I played on a few other teams, and you saw them too, like with the Rob Blakes and the the Robitailles and the Stumples and the Glenn Murrays, like there were Gary Galley, right? Like those were all great guys, but they were definitely long time established NHLers. Yeah. And then there's this other group of us that weren't. And in that team in particular, I felt that there was a big separation, like just from a social side.
Oh, I you know what? That's a good point, actually, because I mean, if you look at, we had Blakey, Nordstrom, Modry. I mean, we'll say those are, and Galley. Those are our top four. And then we had, Robitaille, Stumple, Palfy, Smolinski, Glenn Murray, and I can't remember who was their line mate, but Donald Audette.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then after that, it was just, I mean, there was separation. I mean, those guys have all played in the league for a long time. And, here we are, or at least me, coming in my first training camp or coming into the league for the first time. And, but no, I think I made my own break there, though, too. Sometimes, I probably talked too much or said some stupid stuff, and I can own that. I'm 7 years old, and I look back at my career, and that's why I tell people, I'm like, I don't regret anything. I mean, I wish I would have got a chance to play for the Stanley Cup. I played in the playoffs enough, but I never got past the first round. But I mean, I look back, I said, I wish I would have enjoyed my time. And at the end of my career, I wish that's how I acted at my beginning of my career.
Right. Yeah, no, great point. Well, I'll just put a bow on the LA story for me, which, I mean, I was only there for, whatever, handful of games. But it was when I first got called up after that trade, which another thing, I think I've said it once in this show before, but like the whole one-way, two-way contract, I had a deletion clause in my entry-level contract that if I played 40 games over that 3-year period, that it would change to a one-way, right? A deletion clause. Yeah. So that they left me in Long Beach. So when they called me up for the 6 games, I ended up at 39 for my entry-level contract. So, so that was where that thing came from. But in that game, I think it was like the second or third game, it was Gary Galley's 1,000th game. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And then so they wanted to buy him. I forget what they wanted to buy him, a watch or something. I don't know. Like the team wanted to buy. So they went around to the room. I think it was $500 a guy. Like I'd been there for like legitimately one day, right? And they're asking me for $500. It was like, I think there was just a bit of a disconnect with that team, right? I mean, like they were so established and so there, they didn't really get the fact that I just finished making $37.5 in Long Beach, right? And $500 to me was a lot more than maybe it was to them.
I don't know. I mean, those guys, well, yeah, but those guys were all making big money.
That's what I mean. But you know what I mean? Like there was just a bit of a disconnect, I think. And it was because, the team wasn't in the playoffs, and you've seen that too before, right? Teams that are wired and rolling at the end of the season, it's a more of a togetherness, cohesive unit, and there it kind of wasn't. And again, those guys were great guys and they were nice to me, but just little things like that were kind of like interesting to me, because as your career goes on, you see how it's kind of done differently in different spots. At what point, Blakey, so you go to the Islanders, like you said, you end up signing the extension. Was there a point in time that you can look back and be like, you felt like an NHLer, like that you were one of the club, that you were there and you were going to be there for a while?
Yeah, I think it was probably my second year, my second full year in New York. I think that's what it was. When I got traded to New York, Butch Goring was the head coach. Great guy, love him. But then he got let go, and then Peter Laviolette came in my first year, and I got to play. I mean, I don't know. I probably played all 82 games, or I played a lot, not a lot in a game, but I think I played every single game. Played with Claude Lapointe and Steve Webb. And then over the summer, I talked to Lavi once. And then at training camp, I talked to him. And he said to me, like, you have so much more in you. Like, we have to figure a way to get that out of you. Because and I know, like, I was fast. I was quick. So, I mean, guys that are fast and quick, I mean, I was smaller, but I could get away from people so much faster. I think half the thing is confidence. When you're playing with confidence, you feel better about yourself. And I don't know, it was probably, 10 games, maybe even longer in. He started putting me in a different role, or more of a role, I should say. I mean, I played fourth line with Claude Lapointe. It was great. Great guys, great fun to play with, but you didn't, as a fourth line guy, you don't play as much, obviously, but I did get to kill penalties. I don't know, he just expanded my role a little bit and it kind of took off. And
Do you know
that's
why that would have happened? Like, obviously, he talks to you in the summer. He says, "I see more in you." Was that about it? Like, had you created some trust there, and he just wanted to, see what you could do?
well, I mean, he would tell me like, you're so you're so freaking fast. Like, we just have to figure out like how to do more offensively, and I told him, I said, well, shit, I dump the puck in every time I get to the red line because I'm scared that you're going to bench me, but it's,
Good
again,
point. What did he say to that?
well, he said, well, we don't want you. We didn't ask you to do that. And I'm like, bullshit. You always say that. Dump it in. If we turn it over, we sin, but it's, again, it's that word confidence,
Right.
anything you do, if you have confidence and you feel like you can make a play or score a goal, it's going to start coming for you, and it comes a little bit easier. You're not gripping the stick as tight.
Well,
And
the
I don't
game
know,
slows down a little bit.
what's that?
The game slows down a little bit for you, right? Because
100%.
you're not. Well, let's touch on that though for a second. 'Cause I think that's like when I have private clients now where I help them with stuff like the off ice stuff to try and be the best player on the ice, right? I know we haven't talked about this too much, and you're asking me some questions offline about it, but that's one of the age old questions for everybody, and we've all been through it if you ever played, right? How do you get confidence? So that you can get confidence by earning it. We talked about the process, falling in love with what your off ice routine is, right? And you can grow some confidence by how you approach things, right? So you feel ready, you feel prepared. That's one way for sure. But when you're on the ice and you legitimately think that you're going to get benched if you make a mistake, and maybe there's a reality to that, how do you conquer that? Were you able to figure out the magic solution to be able to do that? Or does it need to have that coach that is maybe going to let you have that another shift, or who believes in you is going to put you out on the ice again?
Well, I think it's a combination of both. I mean, I absolutely loved Peter Laviolette. He's probably one of my, I mean, I had a lot of good coaches, but he was probably my favorite coach. Just a great guy, great human being. And I'm glad he's, still coaching, to be honest with you, because he deserves it. But
Yeah.
I'll never forget it. We were playing Dallas at home, and I was playing fourth line, and I don't know, maybe someone wasn't playing as well. He bumped me up to the second or third line or whatever it was, and so now I'm playing a lot. And now, I mean, the more you play, the better you feel, the more comfortable you feel. I mean, it goes hand in hand with confidence, goes hand in hand with a lot of things. I mean, you sit on the bench for, you get called on, tapped on the shoulder to go out there to bang a few bodies, and then you come back, get some energy in the building or energy on your team, or a spark lifted, or lift a spark for your team. I mean, that's one thing. But if you know that you have it in you, or you think you had it in it, to go out and score goals, and like I said, we're playing Dallas at home, and I don't know, it was in the third period. We were up, or it was a tie game or something, and I scored the game-winning goal. And I'm not tooting my own horn or anything, but I scored the game-winning goal. And ever since that game, it's like I don't know what it was. He had confidence in me. He loved how I was playing. He would talk to me even all the way up to Dallas game. He's like, I had like 3 points in the first 4 games that year, and then I played fourth. I was still playing fourth line, but he would mix me into some guy that wasn't playing as well.
Yeah.
So I was still on my line. I would start with Claude Lapointe and Steve Webb, which was fine. I love playing with those guys, but sometimes Steve Webb would hit me instead of the opposing guy, but I would always start there. But I knew, I don't know, I just knew that he would put me up. And how it is. Lines are never set in stone, especially during a game. Guys get moved around constantly. And for the next 2 or 3 or 4 games or something, I was still on the fourth line, but to start. And then he would move me up, and I would get an assist or score a goal or something. And then, I don't know, it just, from that on, that's the year I scored 25 goals. And I think, you score a couple goals, and you know that if you make a mistake, you're not, oh shit.
Yeah.
He's gonna. now, or I turn the puck over, because you know, if guys are scoring goals, you know this just as well as anyone, they get a lot more leeway on if they turn the puck over. If it's in the back of our net, they're still going to play because they're scoring goals all the time. And I think that was for me, that was the moment where I knew, you know, then you start getting hot and you start scoring goals and you're like, well, shit, I fit in here. You know, this is great.
What a great story too, because I mean that's the other thing. And I was talking with Jason Krog, name you obviously know, I'm sure, right, Kroggy, and we were talking about resistance, like how we can have resistance in a role that we've been given or in a situation, you know. So, and a lot of guys get caught up in that, you know, and it sounds like you were able to establish yourself and own your role in that fourth line role. I mean, be a PK guy, own what you were doing there, even though you've maybe felt that there was more for you, right? That you could have done more, you could have been bigger, but at least you had that role and you owned it. And then when you were given the opportunity, you were able to step into it. And then all of a sudden that grew. I'm sure you saw guys come through that didn't like the role that they were doing. And because of that, you know, they ended up being nothing and then weren't able to establish themselves.
Yeah. I mean, well, I hated playing fourth line. No one likes to play fourth line, but I just accepted it. You know, we had a good lineup. Did I want to play more? Of course. Did I think I should have played more? Of course I did. But I think that there was a certain time it's like we were fourth line, but we weren't treated like fourth line. I mean, we actually played 10 to 15 minutes a game.
That's great.
You know, great. 10 minutes a game for our line, but then depending on how many penalties, you know, Claude Lapointe and I would play more. Yeah. So I was always playing, you know, 10 to 15 minutes a night. So, I mean, that's a lot.
Yeah.
And I just think you over time, I mean, even like Claude Lapointe got moved up to play also on different lines, you know, if guys weren't going, you know, they don't get to play as much and another guy steps up and.
But that's the thing. So you said it, the acceptance part, and I think that athletes have a hard time with that. I mean, I try to provide lessons here in these interviews, and I think that's one of them. Is like you cannot like where you're at, right? You can, but you need to accept it, and that's where the resistance comes in, right? Because you can be really resistant about it, and that resistance like takes your energy away and your focus and all these other things, right? But so you can, like I say to athletes all the time, you don't have to like it. I'm not telling you to like it at all, right? I don't want you to like it. But you need to accept it.
And you want to know something? That's what happened in LA. Exactly. Right. And like I said, throughout my whole life, I've kind of worn my heart on my sleeve, but in LA, I wore my frustration on my sleeve too. And I hated playing fourth line, hated it, you know, and because with Andy Murray, you just never played, you know, and then they'd say, well, you're not scoring. Well, shit, I just played 4 shifts. How am I supposed to score in 4 shifts? And you know how the league is. I mean, if you play on the power play, you're going to score or get points. I mean, nowadays, the first power play on every team is so potent that, you know, they have all these superstars. And that was the one thing that, like I said, if I could go back in time, I wish that's what I would have changed right off
the resistance to it. Yeah. And the response to it.
I had more than most guys. Right. But, you know, as you went on, you just accept it. And I think I felt more comfortable in New York, and like I said, I loved Peter Laviolette. I wish he would have been my coach my whole career, whatever team I was on. I just loved him as a coach and as a guy, and he was fun. He was funny. He made things, you know, and he did a great job there.
Yeah,
but, you know.
How did you go about, I mean, I know it's not conscious. It's another thing that I think is really important and really important actually right now with a lot of athletes, like trying to find jobs somewhere, right? And they weren't able to play this year or whatever the case may be, like having the trust of that coach and having a relationship with them that they're going to go to bat for you. Was that, I mean, sometimes it's luck of the draw, I think. I mean, personalities click sometimes they don't. But did you feel like that your approach to the game or maybe the way you played the game, like what was endearing to you or for Peter?
Well, I think just my work ethic. Like it didn't matter if I played 5 shifts or 10 shifts, or all I did was work hard. Now, if I played 5 shifts, I'd let him know that I was pissed. But that's it. I mean, really. Yeah. I mean, we got along. I mean, he was a USA guy. He was a college guy. You know, I don't know. We just connected. And I, like I said, I loved him. I mean, he was great. I mean, I think he saw something in me that maybe Andy Murray didn't see in me. I mean, he was my second coach, really. But when I got traded, I only played 25 games in Long Island or whatever it was until the end of the season. So with Butch Goring, I mean, it was fine. Plus, they were out of the playoffs so early that it didn't matter. He was playing guys anyways. But I don't know, just my work ethic. He'd always tell me, like, I love the way you work. I mean, just keep doing. I wasn't afraid to go in a corner with Zdeno Chara. I knew I was going to get my ass. It's how many guys go in there the first time, they won't go in there the second time. Well, I just kept going in there. But I played with Z that year, but I'm just using him as an example. Yeah. I mean, Chris Pronger. I mean, it's not fun going in the corner with Chris Pronger, but are you going to go in there the second, third, fourth, fifth time? Yeah. On the first time, you just got manhandled by a guy that's 6'6", and that's what I did. I mean, I just kept going. I was like the Energizer buddy, just kept going and going and going, and I'd get the shit kicked out of me. It didn't matter. I just kept doing
it. You. As a guy, I mean, we'll go with 5'9". There's a lot of young athletes out there though, like that are worried about their size or that they think it's going to hold them back. Like, is there any message to those kids out there? Is that it? Like, I always say you can just like be the most competitive. Like, you're not going to maybe knock guys over, right? But you can be a real pain in the ass to play against, and you can be noticed by doing that. Like you said, going to the corner again and again and again and not going away. Like, there's something to be said for that. I mean, is there something that you would say as far as guidance for some of these young players?
Well, I mean, I think that everyone has a shot. I mean, to be honest with you, size is not a match. Well, since they changed the rules, I mean, little guys are the best players in the league. I mean, look at St. Louis was 5'7". Look at this kid from Montreal, the kid that won the Hobie Baker. He's only 5'7" or something. I mean, just pursue your dream no matter what. And, size isn't a big deal anymore because you can't hold up, and fighting's really not a part of the league anyway. So just go play your game, do your thing. And everyone has a shot to make the NHL. I mean, as far as size goes, I mean, listen, I remember coming to the league, and this is Andy Murray in a nutshell right here. And I liked Andy Murray. You liked Andy Murray. I mean, he was a different cat, but I'll still remember that, or I'll never forget that. He's like, okay, I'm gonna put you on a line, and I like basically prove yourself. Okay, so I played with Ziggy and Stumple, and like we had like they scored, and I had a couple of points, and then Stumple went down, and he goes, "Here's your chance to play center." Okay, well, who do we play against? Lindros. He made me shadow Lindros, Renberg, and Leclerc. Like, are you kidding me? With the centerman down low, I was -5. That was the end of that. I was like, I'm out. I got traded shortly after that. I was like, that's the biggest bullshit move ever. Because he was just trying to make a point, like, pissed me. Yeah, I remember. And Eric Lindros was like, I mean, he was one of the best. But I remember going in a corner like that. It was like a little fly on his ass. He just went like this, get off me. I was like, -5 that game. And then I was like, okay.
That's so funny. My first game in Toronto after the trade from Florida was in Maple Leaf Gardens against the Flyers, and they had the Legion of Doom, and ended up playing against them like the first period. We actually did okay. Like Brendan Convery, myself, and Nick Kyprios, and we scored a goal in the first period. Ended up playing less, but Lindros ended up getting 4 goals that game and beat us. Like people forget how strong that line was. It was crazy.
Oh my! Well, the thing is, but were you playing center?
No, I was right wing.
Oh, see, then you just have to cover your point. I had to go down low with these guys. And it was like you get shoved off Lindros, and then you get bumped into Leclerc, and then he bumps you off, and then all of a sudden you're face planting with Renberg, and I'm like, oh my God, seriously, get me out of this game.
I'll tell you a funny story which you can relate to. I had Leclerc, I'll never forget it. He was taking a puck on the half wall with his butt out. You mean, remember how big his ass was, right? So he's playing a puck on the half wall trying to get out of the zone. And I just had him lined right up. I was like, okay, here we go. I'm gonna make my name for myself. And I go to run him over. He didn't even know I was coming. I was like 205 pounds, right? 210 pounds. I knocked the wind out of myself trying to hit him, and he didn't even know I was there. I had to go to the bench and sit down and have a breather. Those guys were beasts. It was hilarious. Yeah. I want to talk just a little about the role, because you were a bit of a shit disturber, and you were a guy that other guys didn't like to play against or wanted to hate. Was that something that you were intentional about? Maybe that's the right word to use it. Was it something that you were trying to do, or was it just sort of the way you played and the way you were received?
Well, I think earlier in my career, I think I did, and I mean it backfired on me, not only with opponents but even teammates. And you know, it's funny. I told this story a couple of weeks ago that no one's really known about it except for guys on the team in New York. And I remember it was it was the year I scored maybe 28 goals, the Olympic year. We were playing Washington. We were playing Washington at home, and I didn't score for like 4 or 5 games. And I was sitting. It was after pregame skate, and so I'm sitting in the lock. You know, we come off pregame skate. Guys are on there for 10, 15 minutes, however long you want to be on there, and then you come off, and the trainer comes in and goes, "Hey, Mike wants to see in the hallway." And you've been to the Coliseum, you know, in the hallway, and I'm like, "Oh shit." So I go out there. I got my bottoms on, you know, my breezers, my skates on. I'm like, "Hey, Mike, what's up?" He goes, "Nothing. Come, let's, you know, walk down here. We're going to talk." And I was like, "Oh shit," because I didn't want to be traded. I love Long Island. I never wanted to leave Long Island at all. Not 1 ounce of me wanted to leave there. And I was like, so I'm thinking, "Oh my God, am I traded? Did I just get traded? Did I just get traded?" And Mike goes, "How's it going?" I said, "Well, good." I said, "How are you?" And he goes, "Good." I was like, "How are we going to start this conversation?" And he goes, "How do you think you're playing?" And I was playing well. I just wasn't scoring. So there was something missing from my game.
Yeah.
And he pointed it out, you know, Mike Milbury. And I love Mike. I mean, he was one of the best to me because, you know, he gave me a chance and he talked to me all the time. And if guys don't talk to you, they don't like you, right? Isn't that the thing? But he talked to me all the time. And he goes, "Well, there's something." He goes, "I agree, you're playing well, but there's something that's missing from your game." And I said, "Well, what's that?" He goes, "Sorry, I just dropped my phone." He goes, "I want." So we're playing the Washington Capitals. It was like Ovi's first or second year, third year, whatever. He goes, "You're not talking enough. I want to make sure that every player on that team wants to kill you by the end of the night." And I'm like, "Okay." He goes, "Got it?" I'm like, "Okay." So then I came back, and you know, Michael Pekka was my roommate. He sat next to me, and we were best friends when I played in Long Island. We was roommates for 3 years, and he goes, what was that about? What was that about?" And I said, "Well, he told me that I gotta make sure that every fucking player on that team hates you." And he's like, "Oh boy." So then we go on, we play. You know, he's the only one that really knew because you know, everyone kind of just got out of the locker room and they're going home to eat or what.
Right.
What and so we're playing, and I ended up scoring 2 goals that night. But the story, so it was after the second period or something, and my jaw hurts from talking all night. And I remember after the second or third period, Eric Cairns was a great guy. I mean, he really was, and he stuck up for me and all the teammates. You know, he was a tough guy, and he was extremely tough. And I remember him standing up in the locker room. He's like, "Are we allowed to swear on your program?"
If you want to, boss.
No, it was, "Fuck, Blake, like enough. Like I can't protect you all night long. Like Jesus, like stop it." Like he's pissed, right? And like Aaron Asham was on the team. He's like, "Blakey, seriously, enough." And I'm like, "Well, that's what I was told to do." And they're like, "By who?" And I'm like, "Well, Mike." And then Peck said it. He goes, "This is what Mike wants." And Kieran's, he's like, "All right, go ahead. I got your back," you know. And it's funny. It's like that's kind of like the MO of like of how like it started for me. Like I mean, did I talk on my own? Yeah, but like Mike pushed my button. He knew that I was being effective when I talked. You know,
Right.
guys. I mean, you saw it. You know, when I was in Len Berry at first training camp, wanted to, you know, kill me the first, second day of training camp or whatever, the third, fourth day, and I didn't even know who Len Berry was. I'm like, "Who the hell is Len Berry?" But you know, so as time goes on, you know, and then I remember like, so after the game, Mike comes down and you know, GMs don't normally come in the locker room, right? He came down and gave me like a fist pump or a high five. He goes, "That's how we fucking do it." And I ended up scoring 2 goals. I mean, I'm not saying the reason why I scored 2 goals is why because of talking, but he said, "That's the edge I want to see." So then I mean, as time goes on, like I'm like, shit, every single game. I mean, he would remind me on not a game to game basis, but he'd remind me like, just remember, this is what you got to do.
Right.
And I was
Find
like,
that extra edge, hey?
and then I'm like, well, shit. I mean, it's exhausting. I mean, I got guys chasing me around the ice, want to kill me. I don't want this anymore. And I'll never forget. I know I'm fast forwarding, but we played. That's when Lindros, Fleury, and all these guys played for New York. And obviously the Islander, they played for the Rangers. The Islander Rangers was a big rivalry. And Theo Fleury would used to chase me around the ice. It's like, I'm gonna fucking kill you. You're fucking, and I would just be yapping and yapping and yapping. And same with Lindros. They wanted to rip my head off. And I'll never forget. I was playing in I'm really fast forwarding. Chicago. Theo Fleury was in Chicago. It's the year I scored 40 goals, and I lined up next to him on the. We were playing wing. I'm playing right wing. He's playing left wing. Off, And he looks at me, and goes, "Blakey, I always knew you'd score goals if you just shut the fuck up."
Hey, they're just going to take a second to remind you that you can follow me on Instagram at Jason Podolin. I am quite active on there with my stories and with posts, helping players and coaches and parents navigate this space called hockey. You can also get in touch if you're a hockey parent to my parent group, a growing group, over 1,000 hockey families from across North America, where we get together to support each other, celebrate, and work through the challenges of this game called hockey. And that's at my hockey /parent group in Facebook. By all means, join us there. Or you can watch these podcasts and some of my clips and my coaching clips on YouTube. That channel is also growing. That's Up My Hockey on YouTube. 3 great places to follow if you like the content here of Up My Hockey and dig deeper into mindset and the other things that are involved in becoming the best that you can be. So now back to the episode with Jason Blake.
And I said, well, back then I had no choice. I had to, because Mike made me. I knew if I wanted to stay somewhere, I had, you got to do what the GM wants you to do.
So then in saying that, then, so you found a happy medium there somewhere where you kept it a part of your game, but not such a focal point, and you kind of, found a home within that and within that personality. Yeah,
I just stopped. I mean, I just, after that year was a special year for me. I don't know. I just, I don't know. It's exhausting. I mean, right. Every single game, guys are chasing around. They hit you late, or they might get a penalty, but you're a target on your back.
Yeah.
I had enough of it. I mean, the older you get, again, some guys mature when they're 34. So you just, I don't know. It's just whatever. It was exhausting.
I hear you, man. You know what? I want to be respectful of your time. We haven't talked about cancer. We haven't talked about your 40-goal season. We haven't talked about going to Toronto and what a crazy place that is. We haven't talked about the Olympics. So there's so much good stuff. And I told you this would happen. But do you need to run, or should we have a part 2 here?
I got another about 15, 20 minutes. I have to go pick my 8-year-old up from school.
Okay, perfect. You let me know when then. So we'll bowl through here, because I want to touch on that stuff. First of all, man, massive respect and massive congratulations, because, 25, 22, 28, 40, that's legit, man. That's legit hockey, legit numbers. I want to congratulate you on that. And what an epic year to have that 40-goal campaign in a contract year. Wow. How did that all go? Walk me through that. I mean, the 40 goals, you're in a contract year. You're not an idiot. It matters. How did you handle that whole environment?
It's funny. I knew it was a contract year, but I didn't think of it like that. I knew my home was on Long Island. Like I said, I loved it there. I know the rink, everyone says, oh, the rink's a dump, or it was a dump, the Coliseum, but I loved it. Fan base was unbelievable. They supported me. There's a lot of jerseys with Blake in the stands. It was home for me. I loved the whole organization. I love Charles Wong. God rest his soul. But, we came in and Teddy Nolan became our coach that year. Great guy. Love that guy. And he put me on a line. I can't remember. It was Sean Bates, and I can't remember who our centerman was. And God, I can't remember. But anyways, so we training camp was good and everything. And so we went in the first 4 games of the season. We started out west. So we played We played Phoenix, San Jose, LA, and Anaheim. And I had I just came off 28 goals. So I was hoping that I'd, play a little bit more. We just got Mike Sillinger over the summer. We got Victor Kozlov over the summer, which was, one of the most skilled guys that I think to ever play the game.
Yeah.
Big Russian, could skate. And I just wasn't seeing I don't know, the first 4 games were tough. And I came back, and I'll never forget this. I thought I've established myself enough to go talk to the coach. So I knocked on the door, and we won like 1 game, tied 1 game, and lost 2 games or something like that.
Yeah.
So I just said to him, I said, I need to, because he's like, we need more offense. And I said, well, I need to be on a more offensive line. You can't, it's hard to score in the league if you're not on the power play. And it wasn't even that I wasn't on the power play. It's just, everything leads into one thing, and that's confidence. So you touch the puck a little bit more on the power play. You make more plays on the power play. That confidence just builds and builds and builds. And it's like the game slows down, like you said earlier. And so he goes, okay, I'll put you with Yashin and Kozlov. And the moment that happened, it like turned. First game I had 2 goals, 1 assist. Next game I had a goal and 2 assists. I'm just using an example. I don't remember.
Yeah.
I do actually. But things just, it like didn't stop. When you think you're on a roll, it's going to come to an end sometime. It just never stopped. And I just was like, there was a game after the 10th game with those guys. I was like, holy shit, like this is fun,
right?
And then you kept scoring goals, and then we played Columbus at home. At scoring 20 goals in the NHL is awesome, but like things were going so well. I scored 20 goals before Christmas, and I was like, Jesus, I felt so comfortable there. It was home to me. And I never wanted to leave there. And the guys on the team like embraced it. There wasn't any jealousy, no nothing. Because I got break, and it's what you do with your break is what's going to help you along the way and get you where you want to go. And things just worked out. And then we were competitive. We played in the the playoffs, and that's the year we traded for Ryan Smith. And I don't know, just it worked out. It's a year that you'll never forget because you couldn't written a better script.
Yeah. 40 is ridiculous. That's awesome. That's so cool.
And scored 40. Just my, I remember this. I went 2 8-game stints without scoring a goal. And I remember sitting next to Marty St. Louis. I sat next to Marty and Vinny and Eric Stahl in the All-Star game because I played, I was fortunate to play in the All-Star game, and I was just like, oh my God. I got a funny story because Joe Sakic was my favorite player ever growing up. So we were at the All-Star game in Dallas, and I bought this Joe Sakic jersey. Like he was like my idol. And so I saw him, and he's sitting around I think his mom was there, like his family was there, and my family was there too. But and I went up to him and I said, Joe, I said, could you sign this for me? And he goes, well, who do you want me to make it out to? I said, just put to Jason, your best friend, Joe Sakic, or something like that, And he goes, is it for you? And I said, yeah. I said, you're my hero. Gretzky was my hero too, but like, you were my hero. You're the, I know I'm getting off track, but like we used to talk about it, like even at the All-Star game, like Marty looked at me and was like, holy shit, like you went 8 games without scoring a goal. Like, could you imagine if you should have scored 50 that year? With the year that you had. Right. And I know that's a far stretch, but I'm just saying, like, when the stars align for something, that's what they did, to be honest. They just, and I had great teammates. Awesome teammates, great. I played with some great players, and I think once you get your confidence and the puck starts going in, I think there's something inside you that says, I'm going to score. I'm going to score.
Right.
I don't know what shift or what period I'm going to score in. It's just, and I know that probably sounds cocky, but I think you get to that point where like there's games that I played like shit. Like I was awful and I would score a goal.
And it happens. Yeah, I hear you. Let's briefly that All-Star game, and so you're there with Joe Sakic and your childhood idols, and you're in the locker room. Blake's on the back of the All-Star jersey. Like that, there must have been a lot of surreal stuff happening that weekend for you. Like, is that still one of your fondest memories, looking back on that?
Yeah, I mean, I played, yeah, it is. I mean, I played in the World Cup in '04. That was kind of my first USA. That's basically essentially the same thing as the Olympics. It's just
Yeah.
they call it the World Cup. I mean, the same guys go. It's the best of the best. I'm not saying that I should have been there, but I was there. But yeah, the All-Star game was special. I mean, I remember walking into the rink. We were playing a game, and our PR guy was standing there, and he had an All-Star hat in his hand, and I walked in. And he goes, "Blakey, congratulations." And I go, "What's?" I didn't even know what the hell was going on. He goes, "You made the NHL All-Star. Go. You're supposed to stop and see Teddy Nolan." And so Teddy and like Gar Snow was our GM at the time, and they congratulated me, but it didn't even hit me, like you go there, you got all these superstars, and I was only there once, and that's probably one more than I probably should have been. But all these guys done, like Sidney Crosby was there for the third year in a row, Ovechkin, I was all these guys, and it's just a cool moment, and it's, I mean, I think of all this stuff that I've done in my career and that are special to me. I mean, the one thing that I wish I would have done is got a chance to win a Stanley Cup. And, and that's the one thing I wish I would have got to do, especially in New York or even in Anaheim. Would have been cool just with the guys that on the team. They won in '07, but what a great group of special group of guys in Anaheim. But I mean, yeah, playing in the Olympics and the World Cup and the All-Star game. I mean, sometimes you don't have that chance to win a Stanley Cup. So these are your other things that we're super special and proud about. And
yeah, no, congratulations, man. You talked about being comfortable, and that is like an interesting thing that I think the common fan doesn't really get. And like when people move at the deadline, and now you're in a new environment, or trades happen, or whatever the case may be, and you automatically assume the same players are going to show up in this new environment, but the environment is different. Everything about it's different, right? And so, like, I talk about that being the person behind the player, right? Like the player is the guy on the ice, but there's a person involved in everything else that's going on there, right? And the environment's different. You spoke about being so passionate about being an Islander. Was it just way too far apart on money? Like when you decided to go to Toronto, like what made you make that choice of leaving a place you were so at home after this not miraculous, it's the wrong word, but after this, this ridiculous 40-goal season?
Well, it's 8 years later, and I'm still wondering that on a daily basis. No, I think the one thing, when I went to New York, I was embraced right away. And I by Mike and Charles Wong, our owner at the time. I mean, he passed away a few years ago, unfortunately. I mean, he was one of the nicest, greatest guys ever. And he was involved with the team. I'm not saying on a day-to-day basis, but he was involved, and I don't know. I don't know if he knew a lot about hockey, but he was all about Long Island, and he embraced me right away. And I think it was just partly due, or main reasons, because all I did was I worked my ass off every shift I was out there, and he loved that. And I never wanted to leave. And Gar Snow became the GM, which is a super nice guy. And I wanted a 5-year deal at the time. I would have taken 4 years, but I wanted because I wanted to retire there. I mean, it's not everyone's dream to play in a spot and then retire there, work for the organization. I remember having lunch with Charles Wong in November or December or something when things started to really go my way. And I said, I want to retire here. I want to work in the organization. Excuse me. I want to work for you. Long Island is my home, and I loved it. I love the fans, and if you go to a game, and again, I'm not tooting my own horn, but there was more Blake jerseys in the stands than any other jersey, and it feels good, right? I mean, it feels good. And at the time, they said, "Well, we're not going to do any long-term deals," and I'm like, you just gave Rick DiPietro a 15-year deal, and I loved Ricky. I mean, I absolutely loved him. I loved him to death. I mean, he was a good buddy of mine. And it wasn't that him. It was just like, come on. I've been here for 7.5 years. I have, and my stake was like, you got more Blake jerseys in the stands than any other jersey. Like, this is my home. I want to stay. And they didn't want to give me a 5-year deal. So it's funny how things work out in life, right? Because the first thing I did was I said Long Island, and then I gave 4 other teams that I wanted to go to. My agent, you kind of just say, hey, this is where I'd like to go. And you know what I said to him, Jason? I do not want to go to Canada. Well, because I didn't want to move my family. At the time, I had 3 kids.
Yeah.
I just had one that was just born. She was only 4 months old. So I didn't want to go to Canada. Nothing against Canada. I just wanted to stay in the States. I wanted to play in New York. I wanted to play in Minnesota, Dallas, St. Louis, Tampa, somewhere in the States. And the first day of free agency, Toronto and Edmonton stepped up. It's funny, but how things work out. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I really, really enjoyed my time in Long Island. What a great place. I mean, yeah, it actually, it's sad when I look back. I'm not saying it's a regret, because I'm very thankful and grateful for my time that I got in each city, because each city was, I mean, they're great cities, great people, great organizations, but that's the one that I wish I would have just stayed put, because it was home for me. My kids went to school. They grew up there. I already had 2 of them were born, and so they were going to school in New York. And it's easier to play when you feel more comfortable.
Way easier. And that's one of those ones that it's really tough to know until you've done it, right? And you didn't know at the time either, but Toronto, my brief experience in Toronto, I was with that organization for 3 years, man. Like that's different than Long Island in a lot of ways, right? And you show up there as the big free agent signing after a 40-goal season, and you have a 15-goal campaign, and that doesn't tell all the truths of it, but obviously things went way differently for you there than they did the previous season. Like when did you know that it just didn't quite feel right, or it wasn't quite working?
Training camp, when they told me I had cancer. That's kind of when I came to camp. I was in great shape, just as good as I was the year before. And when I came to training camp, and when I was told I had cancer, that's where it went downhill. You want to talk about being a miserable person to be around, or I mean, even my wife, my family. I mean, you don't know you don't know which, you're on a path. There's 10 different roads. You don't know which road you're going down. And that took a lot. And it's like I said on a show last week or 2 weeks, like, that's probably the 1 year. If I could take a year back in the NHL, that's the 1 year. Because I remember Paul Maurice was our head coach. And Paul Maurice and I didn't get along. But I didn't get along with anyone that year. I mean, I was miserable. And I didn't want to play hockey anymore. I lost 10 to 15 pounds in 10 days. I was taking medicine. I mean, I'm not using excuses. I didn't probably act the way that I should have acted, but I was miserable. And, I look back at it, and I wish I could have a conversation with Paul Maurice, because he's a great coach and he's a great guy. And it's like, you can't go back, but that's kind of, I knew, it took me a long time to get my feet moving in Toronto. And it had nothing to do with anyone there. Great guys, great. I mean, I met one of the nicest guys I ever played hockey with that I'd never even liked, Darcy Tucker. Greatest guy in the world, really is. And among other guys. And, when I remember my second year, things turned around. Just to get through that first year. And I know it's a long year to get through, but that's basically what it was.
Yeah, well, talk about that, man, because I mean, you never missed a game. So I mean, you have cancer, you never miss a game, like, and then you actually win the Masterton Trophy that year, which is weird too, right? Because you're talking about it. To me, I'd be like, oh my gosh, kind of this euphoric type thing, but it was actually like it was the cherry on top of a piece of shit year for you, to get this award. Walk me through that.
Well, it was, but I mean, it was tough. I mean, like I said, I came into camp, great shape, great everything. I trained just like I did the years before. And, we had our blood test, and guy said, hey, we got to do another blood test, which is not uncommon. You know that. I mean, guys have to do multiple. They might miss something or whatever. And then the third time, that's when I found out. And I started taking this medicine, and think of it as an athlete or a hockey player, your muscle mass and your strength and your weight is a big deal. I mean, if you gain 2 pounds one day, you feel it on the ice, right? I
Yeah.
mean, I lost 10 to 12 to 15 pounds in 2 weeks.
From the medicine.
Yeah, I couldn't keep it in. Any food that I ate, it was coming out one of two ways. I know you don't want to hear that on air, but that's the truth. I lost weight. I mean, so you go in a corner, you don't win battles, but I mean, they're not going to sit me because, I mean, what are they going to do? Sit me because I lost 10 pounds. It's not my fault. It's the card I was dealt, how you handled it. I didn't handle it the right way. I really didn't. Instead of embracing the team and embracing I was miserable. And that's, like I said, that's the year that I wish I could take back, because I remember Paul Maurice and I butted heads on a daily basis. And I don't even know for what, because at the end of the day, he's a great guy and a great coach, but I was just a jerk.
Right. I know you said you're upset, rightfully so. Like, if you could go back to that scenario, like, what would you have changed? Like, your perspective kind of, or your approach, or what would you have done?
I would have just been happier in my perspective, and I mean, if I knew then what I know now, that everything was going to be fine. Yeah.
Right.
Well, I didn't know. We didn't know.
Right.
It was on a day-to-day basis.
So much uncertainty.
Every day I woke up, I felt differently. There's days we'd be playing the whoever. I didn't want to get out of bed. And I'm like, shit, I got to go to pregame skate. I didn't want it. I dragged my ass to my car, start my car. I'm like, Jesus, what just happened? Like, I look like I just lost 10 pounds, and you could see my cheekbones, my eyes. So all the medicine, you get when you get bags in your eyes, well, all my fluid went right to my end of my eyes. So my eyes, you could see my cheekbones, my bags under my eyes were just huge. I looked like I didn't sleep for a year. Not a year. Yeah.
This isn't a perfect parallel, but like, I had Mark Dial on a little while ago. He lost his eye in a game in the playoffs in the AHL. Great player, and he actually took the eye of somebody else, as crazy as that sounds, 4 months earlier with his skate. I mean, completely by accident. But a guy by the name of Jeff Libby lost his eye, right? So Mark Dial is responsible for that, and then he loses his eye 4 months later. I was on the team when Jeff Libby lost his eye. I was on the ice, right? I saw it. But I never, like, we talked about the emotional, mental trauma of that, and how there was no one there for him at the time. Like, even us as athletes, like, putting the player first, I guess, and not really thinking about how that would have made Mark feel, right? Like, was there anything for you during that? Like, like, you're going through cancer while you're trying to be an NHL hockey player. Like, is there anyone helping you with what you're talking about? This, I don't want to get out of bed. Like, I don't know if I'm going to get through this.
Well, I mean, my wife at the time, I mean, we're divorced now, but she was a big help. I mean, no question about it. If I didn't probably have her at the time, I mean, this is 10, 12, 13, 14 years ago, 15 years ago. So, I mean, she was a huge help, but I had 3 kids. I mean, it's like to have kids playing in the NHL. You come home from practice, you're tired. I was extra tired, and then you hang out with your kids, and for me, it's like I was, I would sit there. She would catch me staring at the kids, like with tears in my eyes, because I'm like, am I going to watch these kids grow up? I don't know. I mean, you don't know what
right.
role, and I know that might sound extreme, but it's the truth.
Yeah.
And if I didn't have her, who knows? She was a huge help.
Right. But Blakey, that's unbelievable though to me. Like, because that's where the game, I think, has evolved, and like, organizations are starting to get it more now. But can you imagine if something like that happened right now? Like, whoever on the Toronto Maple Leafs has cancer, like, there is going to be XYZ person there, like, to talk to if you wanted to, right, to support them through that thing. And like, it was your wife, and thank God for your wife and your family, but you would think at the top league in the world that there'd be some type of an emotional support for that.
Well, I did. I mean, our team doctor, Noah Foreman, I talked to him on a daily basis. I mean, there was other guys, but I mean, but you don't want to talk about it.
Right.
That's the worst. I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, right.
And your savior is to go to the hockey rink. I mean, I will say this, that, the guys on Toronto were really good. They were. But one guy that stuck out in my mind, which I never liked when I played against him, especially what he did to Michael Pekka in 2001 or 2002 in the playoffs, was Darcy Tucker. But Darcy Tucker was probably the nicest guy, most understanding guy, open guy. He would talk to me all the time. I sat right next to him in the locker room. I mean, he'd be like, "Hey, how you feeling today? How you feeling?" You know, and that means a lot. And there was other guys too. I'm not saying just him, but he was one guy that, I mean, you want to talk about a guy, honestly, that is so different on the ice than off the ice. It's Darcy Tucker, because he played with an edge. You played against him. I'm sure you wanted to run him. You wanted to chase him down, right? But off the, like, he's the most genuine, humble person that I ever played with. One of them. There's lots of guys, but he was the one guy I talked to all the time.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I mean, and that means a lot. I mean, that was what Mark was saying too. I mean, you get that one guy. I mean, that one team, and that's the definition of teammate, and that's what we talked about too. I mean, having a long career, you need guys like that, you know, to be successful, and that's awesome. You recognize them. Goodness, Blakey, I know you're tight for time. I don't want to run it out any farther. Would love to have you back on. I mean, one, it's awesome catching up, man. I love catching up. It was great to see you. If you want to come back for part 2, I'd love to have you. But I know you got to go get your 8-year-old. I got to respect your father duties here.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me, Jason. It's great to see you, man. You're looking good.
Trying. Thanks. You too. We'll have to. Are you still golfing, by the way?
I do golf. I do. I do golf here and there.
All right.
But I mean, I got 4 kids, and 3 of them are at home. And my ex-wife is near the, you know, she still lives in Minnesota and Minneapolis, but the kids are with me more, and which is great. I mean, I love it, especially my 17-year-old. And, you know, today is, I mean, my youngest that's 8 goes back and forth, but I have him this weekend. And, but it works out great. We get along. She's a good person. And so.
Helps you out, but I know what you mean. That cuts into the 4.5-hour golf rounds, right?
Yeah. I just circled it a little bit, but I'm dating someone, so it's all good. We're all
good, man. Good to hear. Good to see you. Great to catch up. And Tux has actually been on my list of guys to reach out to and talk with. Actually, I think he'd be a great guest to have on. And actually, Ricky, do you have Ricky's contact info?
Ricky DiPietro? No.
I lived with him in Bridgeport for a whole year. So
it was find a gym with Ricky. The year that we had the lockout year, did you ever see Ricky pre-lockout to post-lockout?
No. Was he huge?
Oh my God. I remember because the lockout was the World Cup, you know, that year. So I didn't see Ricky for like 6-7 months or whatever it was, you know, because we didn't play in 04, 05. And then I saw him in Colorado or something for our first World Cup, like, you know, the training camp or whatever. I was like, oh my God, he was benching like almost close to 400, still squatting 110 because his legs were about this wide. But no, Ricky was one of the best guys ever. I mean, you know, you look back at your career and it's like there's not really guys that I didn't like or that really stood out. But I played a lot of good teammates. Ricky he was all about Long Island. He's probably still getting paid by Long Island right now.
Yeah, well, no kidding. That contract he signed. Yeah, he bought a Hummer that one year, and we were there. He wouldn't eat an ounce of fat, and wouldn't allow his own equipment in his own car. Like somebody else would take his equipment to the practice ring. Like he was a beauty in a lot of ways, but he said really good guy, but very concerned about his fitness. That's for sure. If you have time for one question from a fan, from a guest. Okay, perfect. I'll put this up on the screen. So it's from Cormichael. Would love to know what Ron Wilson was like as a coach and as a person.
Is this Ron Wilson asking this?
No.
I liked Ron Wilson. I had my first experience with Ron Wilson was in the 04-05 World Cup. But that's a totally different thing because I was, you know, we were playing in the World Cup, so I wasn't playing for him like I did in Toronto. I don't know, he was a good guy. I mean, I got along with him. I mean, he was a smart ass. There's no question about that. He did some crazy things. I remember when I was playing in Toronto with the first year that he was there, Obviously I just got done playing the first year. I had 15 goals or whatever. It wasn't a year that was memorable to me or to anyone else. And he came up to me. He's like, God, you're doing everything that I want you to do. Go to the net, play that edge game, do it all. So we didn't play for like another 3 days. Next game, I didn't even play. So that's kind of guy that Ron Wilson was. Like it was like he'd do things for spite, But at the end of the day, I did respect him. I did like him. When I got traded away from Toronto, I was actually sad. That first year I wanted to run right back to Long Island. I wanted to get out of Toronto as fast as I got there. And but that second year when Berkey and Ron Wilson were there, I really enjoyed it. I know that you asked about Ron Wilson. He's a good guy.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of different stories about him. I don't know. I don't have any story about him from a personal standpoint, but I know the way the media covered him, and I'm sure there's some inside poker going on there that you could tell a few more things about.
Yeah.
I know you can't be super open with that stuff, but some guys love playing for him. I'll say that, and some guys hated playing for him. Like there was definitely both sides of that coin.
I like to play for him. I just some days you didn't even know what you're going to get.
Right.
Like you could be the best player on the team, and I'm not saying I was, but you could be that. And all of a sudden, he'll put you down on the fourth line.
Right.
He didn't
let you know who's boss.
It was his way. He wanted to make a stand at all times, and it's fine. Like, I remember I didn't play. It was that game, and we played in Boston. I didn't even play, and my assistant coaches were laughing. They're like, "Don't even worry about it. We have no idea what's going on." I was like, I don't understand that.
That's funny.
Anyways,
man.
Guys, I'm sorry. I got to go pick up my
kids. Yeah, no worries, man. Have a great one. Again, great catching up. Awesome career. 871 games. So great that I was there at the start of it and got to watch the rest of it. So we'll catch up again, buddy. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Thanks, buddy. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Thank you so much for staying till the end. I know that was a wild ride. Jason's story is not unlike a lot of the other guests on here, but it's an somewhat unlikely story. The fact that he was 24 years old in university at 5'9", coming out to have the NHL career that he did, is unique. It's unique, but it's also not that crazy. It's phenomenal to me, the stories of my guests, how they arrived, their arrival, how they were able to stick around, how they were able to persevere. And Jason's story is totally one of perseverance in a lot of ways. To think that he might have been playing golf if it wasn't for an opportunity to play for a USHL team, that he was prepared, even going to university, that he was kind of thinking about being a golf pro at a local golf course and not thinking about being an NHL player, and how that morphed into 800 games as an NHLer, a $20 million contract signed as a free agent, playing on the U.S. Olympic team. Like, how does somebody play on the U.S. Olympic team that wasn't drafted, that didn't have a job, an NHL job offer to the point of they're 24 years old? Like, this stuff really does happen, and we want to discount it and say it doesn't, but it's crazy how relatively often it does happen. Lots of great takeaways from that discussion. The value of being in a safe place, a comfortable place, and how sometimes we underestimate that. Not only players, but fans as well. Like when players leave to go to a different environment, a lot of things can change. The coach changes, your line mates change, the city changes, everything changes, your routine changes, and that can affect the player. Jason, reflecting back, says maybe he wishes he would have taken less years and stayed in New York. Although he didn't dislike his time in Toronto, he just felt like New York was home. That's an interesting takeaway. Earning the trust of your coach and finding those extra minutes, owning your role, right? Owning your role, owning your lane, and then being ready to step in when you are asked to do something else. And that was what Jason did really, really well in New York, and was able to establish himself not only as an NHLer, but as a productive NHLer that was going to score goals and was going to be in the top six in your lineup. That didn't happen overnight. That was 3-4 years in the making, where Blakey was just happy to, well, not happy. He wasn't happy. We talk about that too. The idea of not accepting where you're at, but not having to like it. And Jason hated every second of playing on the fourth line. He wanted to play more minutes, but he wasn't given those minutes. But he stayed there. He worked his tail off. He kept committing. He kept being dedicated, showing up practice the same way, earned the trust of his coach, and then made the most of his opportunities. We also talk about the value of being a teammate, and that cannot be understated. You've heard that here lots of times before. So many good things there. I love that conversation. I wish we could have got into the Olympics. I wish we could have got in a little bit farther. Maybe we'll have Jason back for part 2. But I know there's a lot of good stuff there for everyone. So you know the deal. Play hard and keep your head up. Until next time, it's Jason.